Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 3 of What If Naruto was the Jinchuriki of the World Eater. If you guys enjoyed this what if, and want to see part 4 of it, comment down below and let me know. The like goal for this video is 200 likes. So like this video, to let me know that you're interested in this series, and you want the next part. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Naruto shifted Satsu on his back, where he carried her piggyback. The psychotic Hinoichi twitched in her sleep and mumbled incomprehensively, licking the back of Naruto's neck with a small smile on her face. The mostly dragon glanced over his shoulder at Satsu in wonderment. It was shocking how peaceful she could look in her sleep. She looked soft, innocent and beautiful. She was beautiful. But it was a shocking contrast to her waking personality, which was anything but soft and innocent, and far more bloodthirsty and violent. Naruto blushed slightly at remembering the last mission the two of them had gone on. As it was, Satsu had developed an addiction to killing, and going without spilling blood for a lengthy amount of time made her irritable and violent, more so than usual, anyhow. In response, the Sandaime had given them a relatively easy mission to a small town within Hai no Kuni's borders, where the governor's daughter had been kidnapped by bandits. Naruto waved his registration to the gate guards, Izumo and Katetsu, who let him pass with a nod and knowing looks on their faces. As Naruto made his way to the Hokage Tower, several people gave him strange or concerned looks, as both he and Satsu were covered in blood. Maybe that should have been mentioned earlier. Sarutobi Hiruzen looked up from his paperwork as his door slid open, admitting the blood-covered pair into the room. Naruto, are you injured? The blonde shook his head negatively. Not my blood. The mission was completed, here's the scroll and payment, but we ran across another bandit camp on the way back. The Sandaime sighed and shook his head with a small smile. Very well. Report, Genin Uzumaki. Naruto straightened as well as he could with Satsu on his back, and began to recount his mission. Satsu and I arrived at Shochou 2 days ago, where the governor, Kamaru Kanishi, informed us of our mission, which was to retrieve his daughter, Kamaru Kimiko. They had been kidnapped for ransom by a local group bandits. He paused to shift Satsu into a more comfortable position. We tracked the bandits to a clearing, about 3 miles away from the village, where they had made camp. I planted several flashbang tags around the bandits secretly and set them off, blinding most of the camp. We moved in and dispatched every bandit, even the leader, and recovered Kimiko. Flashback. Naruto twisted the man's arm, and kicked the back of his knees, bringing him to the ground. He grabbed the man's shoulder, and leveled him onto his knees, bringing down 4 heavy punches into his face, shattering his face and breaking his neck with loud snap. He let the dead body drop as Satsu stabbed herself in the left lung, relishing the screams of pain, as the last bandit began to hack blood and collapse, twitching. She sighed in disappointment as the white marks and black skin faded. Kami, what a pussy. Can't even take a little internal bleeding. And these guys call themselves bandits. The two headed to the main tent, where they could hear quiet whimpers. Naruto brushed the tent flap aside and was immediately beset by a man wielding a dagger in his hand. The blonde's hands were occupied, stopping the man from stabbing him in the chest. Naruto did the only thing he could. He headbutted the man viciously, and while he was dazed, roared and released a torrent of flames from his mouth and into the man's face. The fire died from his lips, and he dropped the headless corpse with the cauterized neck to the ground, once again approaching the cage that held a woman inside. She was, according to her father, 16 years old. She had long black hair that was frazzled from the stress and rough handling of the bandits. Kimiko? Naruto asked gently, making the girl jump. He could see her terrified green eyes peer at him from underneath the fringe of her bangs. Who is it? The mostly dragon ripped the padlock from the door easily and moved inside slowly, kneeling in front of the girl. My name is Naruto. Your father hired us to rescue you. The girl shifted shakily and looked up into his face. She had a heart-shaped face, with a small nose and full lips, with a light dusting of freckles across her face, though those were mostly hidden behind the blush that covered her entire neck and face. She shifted again, and this time Naruto noticed that she was rubbing her legs together. Are you alright? He asked in concern. Kimiko shook her head and twitched. No, they gave me some drug they said they wanted me to beg them. He grasped her shoulders gently, retracting his scales and talons. Beg for what? For a civilian, she had some good strength in those arms. With alarming speed, she grabbed Naruto by the shoulders and flipped him onto the small mat she had been sleeping on, straddling his waist with a wildly lustful gleam in her eyes. Beg for release. She shouted, slamming her lips onto his forcefully and forcing her tongue into his mouth, as she ground her crotch against his. Pushing her off, Naruto shouted for Satsu. Satsu. Don't just stand there. He had to resist the feeling of Kimiko sucking on his neck as she rubbed her breasts on his chest. Satsu watched in amusement, before shrugging. Okay. She dropped her side then her robes, throwing the bandages covering her breasts away with her blood-red panties, and jumped into the pile, to Naruto's kind of dismay. Satsu. Flashback end. Naruto coughed into one hand, trying to hide his blush. He looked up to see Sarutobi smirking in amusement. I'm not a child, Naruto. I know what sex is. He nodded at the blonde. Continue. The mostly dragon continued his report. After we woke up the next morning, Satsu and I gathered the loot that the bandits had collected and returned most of it to Governor Kanishi, along with his daughter. He paid us and we began to make our way back. About 8 miles away from Konoha, we came across another bandit encampment, though this one only contained a small group of 8 bandits and the chest they were guarding. Flashback again. Naruto drummed the talons of his right hand against his chin and thought. Should we wait for them to fall asleep or just hit them with an explosive tag? While he mulled over his thoughts, Satsu leaned against a tree in boredom, just wanting to kill the bandits. A devious grin curled her lips as she remembered something Joshin had told her. Biting her tongue, making it bleed, she approached Naruto and spun him around, crushing her lips to his and forcing her tongue into his mouth. Naruto tried to push her off, until he tasted blood. A red mist crept over his vision, and an angry roar was the last thing he heard. Naruto shot awake, whipping his head around in confusion. A groan to his right drew his attention to Satsu, who was naked and covered in blood and other stuff. Glancing around, Naruto felt his stomach churn at the sight. The camp that had previously held 8 vagrants had been torn apart, along with the bandits. Blood, organs and what used to be body parts were strewn about the clearing messily. Naruto's stomach flip-flopped in his body as Satsu cuddled into his side with a moan. Oh, master. The look at his own body added to the terrible feeling in his gut. He was also covered in blood and other stuff. Naruto lurched onto his knees and emptied his stomach, and that didn't help either. The contents of his stomach contained various pieces of meat that he could tell from experience only belonged to one animal. Humans. With a splash, he vomited more. Naruto recovered by shooting fire out of his mouth, trying desperately to rid himself of the taste of human flesh via burning. He addressed himself and Satsu, though both of their sets of clothes were also soaked in blood. He approached the chest with embers still burning in his mouth and opened it. Inside were a few rolls of ryo, a gold and jewel-encrusted dagger, and large, faceted stone that seemed to be made out of some kind of white crystal, possibly diamond. Picking it up, his mind was caressed by a gentle breeze, and a voice like the tinkling of bells and purity spoke in his head. What is this? Someone has found my beacon. The breeze in his mind swept through his head, examining his memories, recoiling in disgust at a blank area of his mind that he was sure contained the events of last night, but radiated approval at his actions before and after. Your soul is pure, dragon-kind, though your flesh is not. Return my beacon to my shrine in the shifting sand wastes, and I will speak to you further, my champion. A great evil has corrupted my dear friend, and I fear for her safety. The presence and soothing feeling faded from his mind, but not before caressing the reviled part of his mind, soothing his guilt and calming his soul. The beacon shrunk and morphed in his hands, becoming a multifaceted ring that slipped onto his left ring finger. Naruto grabbed the contents of the chest and sealed them away, and then hefting Satsu onto his back, and starting to leap through the trees. Flashback end again. Sarutobi looked distinctly green, but shook it off. What do you want me to do? It sounds like this shrine is in Suna. Naruto nodded. I'd like to be added on to a mission to Suna. Meridia is one of the good Daedra lords. She hates undead and the defilers of anything good, really. If something bad happened to a friend of hers, it's probably in the best interest of everyone that she's helped. The Sandaime tapped his chin and thought. Very well. I'll see what I can do. In the meantime, I believe that I must gossip with my lady friends, and tell them about you losing your virginity to your psychotic friend there. He grinned widely at the end. Naruto blushed and looked away, not noticing teammate come in behind him. I didn't lose my virginity on this mission, old man. I gave it away a while ago. Sarutobi leaned forward, steepling his fingers with an interested look. Really? To whom? The whole of teammate wanted to know this as well. Hinata seemed devastated, but resigned. Kurenai was staring at the back of Naruto's legs, admiring the spikes that jutted out from the sides of his shins. Shino may have been interested, who knows. Kiba was irritated that Naruto had lost his virginity before him. Unknown to everyone, another presence had snuck into the room, following her son. Well, Naruto scratched the side of his face sheepishly. She's an important clan figure, and she took it upon herself to teach me how to resist seduction techniques. I don't want to hurt her reputation. The Sandaime entered a thinking pose, thinking of women that would match the description. Mikoto Uchiha? He asked. Naruto shook his head. Misaharu no? He guessed again. Naruto shook his head once more. She's married. Sarutobi snorted into his hands. So? She doesn't care, her husband's gay. Behind him, Kiba connected the dots in his head. You son of bitch. Naruto heard the shout from behind and turned, seeing Kiba charging at him with a fist raised and a snarl on his face. Without thinking, Naruto raised his hand and powered a shield. Kiba hit the shield and was thrown back, making a sound similar to a rubber ball bouncing off of a plate of metal. Teammate thought over Kiba's reaction and came to the same conclusion that the feral shinobi had as he scrambled to his feet. A callous hand descended on Kiba's shoulder, holding him place. The hand was slender and womanly, but bore the scars of intense training and clawed fingernails of the Inizuka. Kiba followed the hand up to the arm that connected it, to the shoulder, and then to face of one Kiba feared most. His mother. Sume Inizuka was one of the toughest women to come out of Konoha, more so than Anko Midarashi and Kurenai Yuhi, considered slightly less impressive than Kushina Uzumaki and Tsunade Senju. One of whom was now dead and the other a drunk. She had been considered a prodigy in the Inizuka clan jutsu, becoming a genin during the beginning of the Third War, shooting to Chunin, and then Jonin within 5 years. She was the youngest woman to take over as the Inizuka matriarch, being only 16 at the time. She had been married to an Inizuka male whose name was stricken from Konohagakure files, after he was caught selling information to enemy villages. She had later divorced the male after tracking him down to a small village, knocking him out and killing his Ninken partner, losing her right eye in the process. After the male had awoken, she made him sign the divorce papers, and tied him to a tree, lighting an explosive tag she had placed on his crotch and leaving. At 35 years of age, with 2 children, one of whom was 13 and the other 18, she was, in crass terms, one hot MILF, though any who said that out loud would have to be a long ways away from Sume. With the loss of her eye, her other senses had become even more formidable. She wore dark green pants with a weapon pouch tied each thigh, and the Jonin vest, the top unzipped slightly to allow her to breathe without her breasts, impeding her oxygen intake. She wore a blue long-sleeved shirt with a low-cut front, along with black metal gauntlets on each arm, a cloth glove covering the hand. Sume was a subscriber to Naruto's metalworking, having received the first piece he had ever made, an eye patch made of ebony metal with the Inizuka clan markings embossed in gold on it. With the help of a medic nin, she had the eye patch sealed over the empty socket, so that it could never be taken off. "Calm down, pup," she said with a knowing smirk. "Who I fuck is not your problem." Kiba pointed at Naruto and then his mother, stumbling over his words. "But he's... and you. But ah." With that, Kiba's eyes rolled up into his head and he fainted dead away. Sume gave a feral grin at the state of her son, before turning to Naruto. "Hey, Ryu-kun. You smell like you took a bath in a river of blood." Naruto shuddered in disgust, mumbling, "Don't remind me." On his back, Satsu giggled and muttered in her sleep. "Blood. Haha." "Anyway," Naruto said, straightening up and tossing a scroll to the Sandaime, "let me know when a mission to Suna comes in, alright? In the meantime, I am going to drop Satsu off and light myself on fire." Hinata gasped and squeaked. "Naruto-kun. Why?" He gave the Hyuga heiress a deadpan look. "Hinata-chan, I'm covered in blood. The only way I'll get rid of the smell is to burn it off." She giggled nervously. "Oh, right. Sorry." Hinata went to hug him, but he stopped her with a look and a pointing finger at his clothes. Sume sidled up to Naruto with a mischievous grin, and took his arm in one hers. "Come on, Ryu-kun, you can use the baths in my compound." Her grin widened, showing her larger canines. "We tend to get bloodier than others, so we have special herbs in our baths to get rid of the blood easier." Sarutobi filed the scroll away for a later date, and motioned for the conscious members of Team 8 to come forward. Kurenai waved to Naruto as she, Hinata and Shino stepped up for a mission. Kiba's eye fluttered open as Naruto stepped over him, his vision coming into focus just in time for him to see his mother lick Naruto's left cheek, where, if he had been an Inizuka, the clan markings would have been. He slumped back to the ground, losing consciousness again. He had only ever seen his mother do the same thing to one person. His father. After stopping by the apartment building that Naruto, Yujido, Samui and the Uchiha Kunoichi shared to drop the unconscious Kunoichi off, the blonde and the Inizuka clan head walked into the Inizuka compound, into the clan head's house. "Go wash yourself," Sume ordered with a small smile. "Just toss your clothes out here, and I'll put them through the wash." Sume left Naruto near the bathroom and went into her room to change. Looking at the dresser that contained her clothes, the Inizuka matriarch smiled at the photos lining the top. There was one of her in the hospital, after giving birth to her first, Hana. Natsume in the picture was younger and had a weary look on her face, but was smiling and holding a small baby with brown hair in her arms. The picture was torn in half, the other part, that it contained her ex-husband, had been burned to ashes. Another picture was an even younger Tsume and a pretty girl the same age with long red hair and grey eyes, eating ramen together with happy smiles. Another was a green box with silk lining the inside, and a place where her eye patch used to rest. Next to it was photo of a young Naruto getting a kiss on the cheek from Tsume with her brand new eye patch in place. The sound of clothes hitting the floor drew Tsume from her recollections. She left her room, and went by the bathroom, grabbing the pile of bloody clothes on the way. She dumped the load into the washer, and added the soap, before looking down at her clothes and noticing the bloodstain on the front of her vest and sighing. "Might as well." She grumbled under her breath, unzipping the vest, and throwing it into the washer. Hearing the water in bathhouse begin to run, the Inizuka matriarch smiled as a devious idea began to form in her head. She stripped out of the rest of her clothes and dropped them in washer, and then turning it on. Walking through the house naked, she slid the door to the bathhouse open quietly and slipped in, closing it softly. She approached Naruto from behind silently, watching in amusement as he muttered to himself about the dried blood between his scales. Naruto jumped in shock as the two soft arms encircled his chest, along with a pair of large breasts pressing against his back. "Hey, Ryukun. Need some help?" Sume asked teasingly. He sighed and scrubbed the scales on his arms. "Yeah, it'd be nice. I have blood stuck between my scales." Sume laughed at his predicament and grabbed a rag to help him. They cleaned Naruto off, chipping away the dried blood and exposing the shiny black scales underneath, and then moved on to actually washing him. The Inuzuka matriarch trailed her fingers across his spine lightly. All along his back, small gray scales had begun to grow, along his spine and over his ribs, and the lumbar had begun to bulge slightly, as the previously compacted dragon bone began to expand. "It won't be long, will it?" she asked softly, rubbing the muscles of Naruto's back. Naruto sighed, feeling the tension start to leave his body. "Yeah," he said, "I'd give it about 4 months before the full transformation. Until then, I'll just look more and more like a monster." Sume spun him around, and planted a heavy kiss on his lips, wrapping her arms around his shoulders, and holding him tightly to her body. "It's not the dragon on the outside, Naruto, it's the man on the inside that matters," she whispered as they separated. She stroked his cheek, following the curves of his markings to his lips, and stared into his eyes. "You are precious to me, Naruto-koi, never forget that." Naruto smiled softly at the woman. She had a roughness that was presented in public and sometimes in private, but she had her gentle side too, one reserved only for family and loved ones. He kissed her deeply, with gentle passion. They moved into the bath and sat down on the bench, with Sume straddling Naruto's waist. They let the hot water relax them as they relaxed each other. The bathhouse was filled with the sound of soft moans of pleasure and groans of exertion, as Naruto and Sume made love in the steam of the baths. 2 days later, Naruto huffed as he slowed to a walk, panting tiredly with his hands on his knees. "It's getting harder to move fast," he grumbled in his mind. "It is unfortunate," Alduin commented, "but after you fully transform, you will be able to gain your speed back when in human form." "I don't understand what you're bitching about," Kyuubi muttered from her corner. "You can punch a hole in brick wall, walk through fire and deflect most weapons with your scales, and you're complaining about the loss of speed. Priorities, dude." Naruto shook his arms out and stretched. "In the ninja lifestyle, speed is very important. It saves lives. TCH, whatever. You have a visitor, Naruto." Naruto noticed as well, seeing Suki approaching him with a smile. "Hey, Naruto-kun." He smiled at her and responded, "Hey, Suki-chan. I haven't seen you in a while." Suki blushed and scratched her neck in embarrassment. "Sorry, Naruto-kun. Ka-san was teaching me for a while." Naruto nodded in acceptance. "Did you learn anything useful?" The Uchiha heir smiled in a subdued manner and nodded. "Yes, I did. That's not what I came for, though. Would you like to have lunch with me, Naruto-kun?" The blonde thought for a second before nodding. "Sure. Where do you want to go?" Suki smiled happily and grabbed his hand. "How about Ichiraku's?" They shared a laugh and jogged out of the forest holding hands. They made their way to the ramen stand and entered through the flap. The inside wasn't very crowded, and Ayame, who was writing the order of a customer down at the bar, looked up and greeted them. "Welcome to Ichiraku's. Have a seat and I'll be right with you, Naruto-kun." The two took a seat at the far end of the bar on stools, while Ayame approached them with her notepad ready. "Alright, what can I get you today?" Suki tapped her chin, looked at the menu, before deciding on something. "I'll take a bowl of the vegetable ramen with some tuna on a onigiri." Ayame jotted the order and turned to Naruto with a smile. "And you, Naruto-kun?" "I'll take a bowl of the beef with extra meat, please," he replied with a small smile. The waiter smiled cheerfully at them and went off to fulfill their orders. Suki tapped a short rhythm on the counter before asking Naruto a question that had been on her mind for a while. "So, is it true about you and Sume and Inuzuka?" Naruto tried to hide the blush that covered his face and stuttered out, "Why are you asking so suddenly?" Shuffling from behind them drew their attention to Samui and Tenten, who had just entered the establishment. "I'd like to know about that too," the blonde stated with her arms crossed under her breasts. Naruto blushed heavily and looked away. "It's as I said, she taught me how to resist seduction techniques. Nothing more to it." "Really?" Tenten asked sarcastically. "Then why did I see you and her together a couple of days ago passing by the shop, arm in arm?" The mostly dragon shrugged. "What? It's not like we aren't friends. Just because we sleep together on occasion doesn't mean we're married or anything." Suki slammed her hands on the table. "You sleep together?" Naruto was surprised, the anger on her face. "Yeah, on occasion. I don't see what the big deal is. I know Asuma has been trying to get in Kurenai's pants, Anko rapes her female prisoners on occasion, and Kakashi sleeps with civilian women all the time." Vegito joined the conversation with a yell. "You don't see what the big deal is, we're going to be married, Naruto. Would you care if we slept around with random guys?" The horrified look on Naruto's face spoke volumes. "Of course, I would." Samui replied back, "Then why should it be any different for us?" I don't. What about our feelings, Naruto?" Suki asked. The girls' voices, questions and accusations made Naruto feel as if he was surrounded by slowly closing walls of anger and unhappiness, and it got to the point that he couldn't take it anymore. He started muttering under his breath as the girls closed around him. Rocked run dramaral bovel. But the crack of displaced air, Naruto was there 1 second, and the next not. He just suddenly wasn't around anymore. The girls were now without their source of anger, and were about to set out to find him when they found the path blocked by a frigid Nichiko Hyuga. What do you think you're doing? She asked in cold tone. Move Nichiko, we have to find Naruto. Samui ordered, preparing to push the Hyuga Kunoichi aside. I don't think so. Nichiko stood firm with her hands crossed resolutely over her chest. While you were yelling in Naruto's face, I scanned his body with my eyes. Every organ in his body is changing, as well as his brain. From what I heard from Hanabi-sama, every part of his body is going through similar changes, some earlier than others. She brushed an errant bang of hair away from her face briskly. When I looked at his brain, I saw the center for the instincts is growing right now. His animal instincts are at an all-time high as it is. All he has on his mind right now are 4 things. Eating, sleeping, fighting and having sex. Though I dislike it as much as you that I didn't get it first, I understand what he's going through, as should you all. Nichiko scowled at them, pointed behind them at the bar. There, where Naruto had been sitting, were 8 deep gouges in the table where he had gripped it with his talons. That was where he was grabbing to stop from attacking you. In short, Naruto is going through an advanced version of puberty. You remember what that's like, don't you? She asked Samui rhetorically. After all, that's when those huge things grew. If I were you, I'd lay off Naruto-kun for a while. Having said her piece, Nichiko left the stand with a brisk stride, heading back to the compound. The other girls dispersed slowly, lost in their own thoughts. The Nichirakus, a maid came out of the back with a large bowl of ramen topped with many slices of beef. Naruto-kun. Order Naruto. She looked around the small stand and couldn't see either the blonde or his Uchiha companion. Huh. I wonder what happened. Maybe I should save this for Naruto later, but he looked really hungry. A-Mei thought over her choices before nodding to herself and sealing the bowl into a small scroll. Dad. I'm going to take some food to Naruto. Okay dear. Have fun. The waitress closed her eyes and loosed a small and quick pulse of chakra, waiting for the returning pulse before taking off in the direction it came from. Thank Kami for ninja training. It took her about 20 minutes to find Naruto while leaping through the trees. He was in the dark part of the forest, where the wild animals were more prevalent. She almost missed him, with the fireball barely missing her. The fireball sailed past her and impacted into a tree, where it expanded and dissipated, taking half of the tree trunk with it. Aimei-chan. The brown-haired waitress looked up to see a shocked Naruto with the red receding from his eyes. Hey, Naruto-kun. I brought you lunch. She trailed off uncertainly. The blonde grimaced and ran a hand through his hair. I'm really sorry, Aimei-chan, I should have noticed you coming. He sat himself down on a nearby fallen log with a depressed visage. Aimei sat down next to him and wrapped an arm around his shoulders. What's the matter, Naruto-kun? You haven't been yourself lately. Naruto sighed and scratched at his face. My changes. My instincts are screaming at me all day, and the pain that comes from my organs changing doesn't help either. All I want to do is fight, eat, fight some more, fuck, eat, fight some more, fuck some more and sleep. It's like these little bugs crawling over my skin, I can't help but want to itch them, you know. He glanced at her face and froze. Aimei had dark red all across her face at his wording. I do know, Naruto-kun, I went through puberty once. Naruto found himself licking his lips as her scent washed over him. There was a multitude of ingredients in her smell, most of them for ramen, but there was also an underlying apple and honey smell that made his skin tingle. Then he realized that he had been staring at her unerringly for about a minute. I'm sorry, did you say something? He asked apologetically. The waitress blushed under his intense gaze and made her question again. So, do those urges of yours, the one that want to have sex, are they just for any woman? He quirked an eyebrow at her curiously, but answered anyway. Not really. I mean, I'll see a good-looking woman and think, I'd like to bang her, but it's just that. Nothing more. But when it's someone I care about, Naruto trailed off with a blush. Let's just say that it's very hard for me to control myself right now, Aimei-chan. He muttered lowly. Aimei eyes widened in shock. He's trying not to take me because he cares too much to hurt me like that. This is my chance. The hand not resting on Naruto's shoulder came up and grabbed his chin, turning his face towards her, where his lips met hers. Aimei kissed Naruto softly, trying to put the feelings she had into her lips, in an attempt to show them to Naruto. Naruto's eyes nearly popped out of his head. Aimei-chan. She put her finger over his lips to silence him. Just let me speak, Naruto. She whispered quietly, not opening her eyes. I know I'm not a ninja anymore, Naruto-kun, I know I'm older than you, but let me love you. She kissed him softly. You were the person who tried my first ramen. You beat Tashi when he called me plain. You told me I was beautiful, even in a village full of kunoichi. Do you remember that night, years ago? Do you remember what you said? Naruto's mind fell back, years in the past. Flashback. Aimee was 12 years old. She sat on the steps of her house, tears running down her cheeks as she sobbed into her hands. Aimee-chan. The brunette wiped her eyes hurriedly. Oh, hey, Naruto-kun. How's it going? She asked in false cheerful voice. Naruto frowned at her, his 8-year-old, slightly chubby visage twisting. Don't try to fake me, Aimee-chan. What's the matter? Aimee was lost for words. She couldn't tell him about Tashi, the academy student she had a crush on had rejected her, ripped her self-confidence to pieces. He narrowed his eyes on her, noticing the running makeup she had applied, trying to look even prettier. You asked out Tashi, didn't you? He accused lowly. Aimee just nodded, fresh tears spilling out of her soft brown eyes. Naruto sat next to her, and threw an arm around her shoulders. What did he say? The waitress in training grabbed onto Naruto and buried her face in his shoulder. She told him how her crush had called her plain, how he would never think of dating a low-class waitress, when he could rescue princesses and marry them. When she finished, she looked up at Naruto's face. His visage had twisted into a mask of anger, the red of his pupils overtaking the blue of his eyes. He gently pushed Aimee off of his shoulder. I'll be right back, Aimee-chan. She watched as he strode off with a purposeful step, hand clenched in anger. 20 minutes later, he returned with a satisfied expression and blood dripping from his upper lip. Naruto. Aimee cried in alarm, rushing forward to see to his injury. I'm alright, Aimee-chan. He reassured her, holding the hand she was patting his face with. What happened? She asked quickly. Naruto smiled at her and hugged her tightly. I found Tashi and showed him what happens when someone insults my friends, he said with a smile. I also recommended that he drop from the ninja program. Aimee looked at him in confusion. Why? He smiled warmly up at her. Because he was obviously blind to see that you were plain. The brunette's cheeks flushed dark red. What do you mean? Naruto hugged her tightly, his face pressing into her developing chest. Aimee-chan is the most beautiful girl I've met. If you asked me out, I would have said yes in a heartbeat. I would have taken you to all your favorite things and be gentlemen. I would hold Aimee-chan and love her forever, because that's what she deserves. And then when I was old enough, I would marry Aimee-chan and make her my wife, so I could always be with her. Aimee's eyes were white in shock, her cheeks flushed. Naruto. The blonde looked up at her with determined eyes. I will marry you, Aimee-chan. I promise. Aimee smiled shyly, tears of happiness gathering her eyes. You know it's not a real promise until you seal it, right, Naruto-kun? His eyes whitened. How do I seal it? She bent her head and kissed his lips chastely, an atomic blush covering both of their cheeks. They parted, staring at each other with wide eyes. There, now it's sealed. Aimee whispered. Naruto pushed himself onto his tiptoes and kissed her this time, sealing the promise on his end. I will, Aimee-chan, believe it. Flashback over. Naruto blinked and looked into Aimee's eyes. I promised I would marry you. Aimee smiled at him with tears in her eyes. And we sealed it with our first kisses. She grabbed onto his shoulders and pulled herself into him, relishing in his warmth. I know I'm not a kunoichi, but please, Naruto-kun, please. Naruto lifted her chin this time, looking her in the eye. He kissed her softly, with passion. I never break a promise, Aimee-chan, never. She sobbed slightly and threw herself on him, pushing him off of the log and onto the ground. I love you, Naruto-kun. I love you. She mumbled in his ear, holding him tightly. Naruto held just as tightly. I love you too. Unknown to both of them, someone in the forest sobbed lightly, having heard the whole thing. A small rustling in the bushes was the only sign of their departure. 3 days later, Naruto stepped into the Sandaime's office with a smile. You called for me. Sir Toby waved him in with a grin. Ah yes, here you are, Naruto. I believe that I have a solution for your problem. Teammate was also in the room. Hinata waved slightly with red cheeks, Shino nodded stoically, Kurenai smiled warmly at him, and Kiba ignored his presence altogether. I received a mission request from the daimyo of Kase no Kuni. Apparently, people have been disappearing from villages in Kase no Kuni, and the daimyo wants to stop it. The Sandaime shuffled the papers on his desk and pulled a scroll with a blue wave emblem stamped on it. In an effort to strengthen our ties to Sunagakure, I have sent them a missive asking for help in a joint mission. I have you down as an attaché, Naruto-kun. You can search for your shrine, as long as you report back to teammate regularly. The old man handed Kurenai the scroll and went back to his paperwork. The raven-haired woman turned to her team with a smile. Get the equipment you need, desert gear with water skins, light clothing and head coverings. Meet me at the gate in half an hour. She left in a cloud of smoke, leaving the team to gather their things. While the 3 clan heirs left for home to gather equipment there, Naruto left for Higurashi's weapons. Naruto pushed the door open, the bell ringing and drawing the attention of the 2 women at the counter. Samui had been leaning on the counter, chatting with Tenten when Naruto had come in. Their greetings were rather subdued. They hadn't talked to him since the incident at Ichiraku's, and every meeting was filled with awkward silence. Naruto looked at them with longing in his eyes, but he sighed and went to the clothing section of the store without a word spoken. As he searched through the racks for desert clothing, he heard the door open and the bell ring. He grabbed a few pieces and a couple bolts of tan cloth, and began to make his way to the counter, when he nearly ran into two women. One was Makoto Uchiha, dressed in a simple everyday kimono. She had a bundle of shuriken in her hands and was chatting with a woman who had pink hair. Unlike her daughter, Miss Haruno had a dark color to her hair, making it almost deep pink. She was about the same height as Makoto, with her hair reaching mid-back. She had a very full figure and a cheerful, heart-shaped face with light blue eyes. At one point, she had been a ninja, but never made it past Genin after her first kill. She was the head of a merchant family that sold mostly clothes and jewelry, with a side business of restaurants. Misa had married Kansaki, a bureau-mate, to help him out of a tight spot with his parents, who wanted to marry him to a woman inside the clan, despite the fact that he was gay, and the girl was his cousin. They had Sakura together, but that was only out of the stipulations set forth by his parents, in order for him to remain married. Despite that, they both raised Sakura lovingly. Both women smirked mischievously when their eyes landed on Naruto, twin sparkles of playfulness dancing. As one, they sidled up to Naruto and enfolded his arms in their well-endowed chests. "So, what's this I hear about you and Sume?" Misa whispered sultrily, pressing her body to his side as Makoto did the same, trapping him in a coffin of soft female flesh. "Yeah, Naruto-kun, are we not good enough?" Makoto crooned softly in the other ear. Naruto tried to stammer a reply, but Misa and Makoto giggled before he could. "Don't look so scared," Misa said with a giggle. "We were joking." The Uchiha matriarch leaned in with half-lidded eyes and whispered, "Maybe." Both women gave Late a soft kiss on each cheek, before walking off with smiles and an extra sway in their hips. Naruto watched them leave with a shocked expression that morphed into a suspicious one. "Alright, what the fuck is going on? This is like the third time today I've been propositioned by women. I have no clue what is causing this, and I'm kind of afraid to find out." He shook his head, and went to the counter, sighing as Tenten silently rang up his purchases. "I'll be back in about 2 weeks, maybe more," he muttered quietly. "I hope we can talk when I come back. I miss you." Before his statement had registered in Tenten's and Samui's minds, he had already left. 5 hours later, after Naruto had met teammate at the gate, they had left, tree-hopping to the edge of the desert to meet the team from Suna. There weren't many words spoken between them during the trip, only a grunt of exertion or a huff of breath from jumping. The sun began to reach the other horizon and cast an orange glow over the world, so Kurenai stopped them to set up camp. "We'll be in the desert soon," she explained. "You'll want to conserve as much energy as you can." To that effect, "Hinata, you get first watch, Shino you get second, I'll take third, and that leaves Kiba with fourth and Naruto with last." Naruto volunteered to hunt for dinner, leaving Hinata and Shino to gather firewood and Kiba and Kurenai to set up the individual tents. It didn't take long for the dragon shinobi to catch a brace of rabbits and a young doe, along with a few eggs from various bird nests. When he came back, the tents had been rigged and there was a good-sized fire going. Naruto skinned and gutted the rabbits and the doe, saving the edible innards and disposing of the rest, and then spitted the meat and set it roast. Soon, the smell of meat began to permeate the campsite. They sat around the fire and chatted about trivial things. Eventually, Naruto grabbed his sword and a small block of black metal, and began to sharpen his sword, the soft screech of metal ringing in the clearing. Kiba noticed something about one of Naruto's hands and pointed it out. "What's with the ring, jackass? Did you get married or something?" Naruto glanced down at the white crystal ring. He had almost forgotten that it was there. "No, I didn't get married." There were a few sighs of relief, but he couldn't tell who gave them. "This ring is the reason I've joined you in Suna. One of the deities who watches over the world lost this ring, and I'm trying to return it." The dog nin scoffed. "Deity? Really?" With the incredulous looks he received from the others, Naruto explained about Meridia and her purpose. As he finished, he handed out the meat and sealed the rest away for later. He answered their questions to the best of his ability, and explained what he could. After they finished, Kurenai tossed her stick into the fire and began to get ready for bed, ordering the others with the exception of Hinata to follow. It was at that time, where Naruto was giving Hinata a goodnight kiss, was he shocked. Shino had discarded the jacket Shino normally wore, and pulled a small tie that kept Shino's hair together out, letting Shino's brown, spiky hair flow out to the actual length. Shino then reached behind Shino's back and undid a small knot on Shino's bindings. The bindings that kept her nicely formed average-sized breasts out of view. Naruto stared shamelessly at Shino as she stretched her back. "Shino, you're a woman." The bureau-mate gave him a confused look, now easily visible without the high color of the sunglasses. "Yes, is that surprising, Naruto-san?" Now that he could see all of her body, it actually wasn't. That heavy coat really did hide a lot. She had a curved and lithe body, her toned stomach being bared by the midriff shirt she wore. Her face was soft, with high cheekbones and eyes with light brown eyes that glittered, even without light shining directly in them. Hinata giggled behind her hands with a small smile. "I'm not surprised you didn't know, Naruto-kun. Most civilians believe that there are no females in the Aburame clan, just one queen that gives birth to all the rest." Shino shook her head with a small scowl. "And they are idiots. Just because we all wear heavy coats doesn't mean there aren't any females. Hinata giggled at Shino's disgruntled expression as Kiba settled down in his tent. The Aburame Kunoichi glanced at Naruto with a questioning gleam in her eyes. Since you thought I was a male, was that why you ignored all the signs of attraction I made? Naruto thought back to the academy. Now that he had a new perspective, his memories were different. With Shino being a girl, it made the acts he thought were just weird make sense. How she would sit close to him, engage him in conversation and discuss things, and usually just him. Yeah, actually. Naruto scratched his head sheepishly. I thought you just preferred my company over other guys. Sorry about that. Shino gazed at him searchingly, before letting a small smile curve her lips. It is perfectly understandable. I simply believed you weren't interested. She kissed him on the cheek and entered her tent. Hinata gave Naruto one last hug and kiss, and hopped up into a tree to keep watch. Good night, Naruto-kun. Sleep well. He waved to her and entered his own tent, settling down into his bedroll and falling asleep quickly. Hours passed and the moon rose as Hinata watched the camp, periodically turning her Byakugan on to check the perimeter. But even then, she missed the shadow that passed through the camp. The flap to Naruto's tent opened slightly, letting a shadowed figure inside. The figure watched as Naruto twitched in his sleep and grunted in discomfort. As she watched, a small hole was poked out of the back of his shirt by a small black spike. Oh, sweet Naruto-kun, she whispered sadly, brushing her fingers gently across his cheek. So uncomfortable. A feminine form slipped into his bedroll and wrapped her arms around his neck and pulled on him until his head was resting on her breasts. Let my bosom comfort you tonight, my dear. She whispered as she ran her fingers through his hair. Soon, I will make you mine, Naruto-kun. Just a little while longer. Soon, soft snores joined Naruto's as they slept. They were only disturbed once that night, when Kiba poked Naruto with a stick to wake him up. It didn't really work, but Naruto, still half asleep, formed 3 shadow clones outside of his tent to do his job, and then snuggled into the large pair of breasts that served as his pillow. The next morning, Naruto was woken early by one of his clones, with the other 2 rousing teammate. What followed was a quick packing of tents, followed by wiping all traces of the camp out. As they traveled, the terrain began to change radically, going from trees to scrubland in a blink of an eye. The town was small, with barely 400 people living around a freshwater well and a small oasis. It was here that teammate and Naruto would meet another Genin team, this one from Sunagakure. It was noon, and teammate had gotten rooms at the tiny hotel, and began to ask around about the disappearances that were the basis of the mission. Naruto as well had started his own investigation, searching for any leads on the shrine to Meridia. The best lead was from an elderly woman with skin like leather. It seemed that, every day at dawn, a bright light would shine out of the sand wastes. She had told him about the statue she had found after following the light, a statue carved from marble of a woman with stern but gentle face, wearing a robe that spread like wings around her body, her arms raised as if cupping a round object. As Naruto was leaving the old woman's house, he stumbled upon 3 people. One was a woman, maybe 3 years older than himself, wearing a light purple battle kimono that revealed her shoulders and cut off at mid-thigh. She carried a rectangular length of iron on her back, with her sandy blonde hair tied into 4 ponytails and her hitty-eyed around her neck. The other was a guy, maybe 2 years older. He wore a black bodysuit with cat ears, something Naruto thought a person who lived in the desert wouldn't want to wear. He also carried a large, bandage-wrapped bundle on his back, and his face was painted with purple curves. The last was another girl. She had very cold seafoam green eyes and pale skin, with black rings like that of a raccoon around her eyes, and a kanji eye over her left eye. Her shaggy red hair hung down to the nape of her neck and framed her heart-shaped face. She carried a large gourd on her back, attached to her by a large wood sash. She wore a high-neck crimson shirt over mesh under armor with dark brown shorts and sandals. The first one to see Naruto was Makeup Guy. His eyes widened before he pointed at Naruto with a triumphant shout and wide grin. See, he crowed wildly, I'm not the only one who wears war paint. There were a few things that set Naruto off, and one of them was calling his facial markings war paint. If anything, they were most similar to the Inizuka clan markings. Naruto's eye twitched. They're not war paint. They are clan markings. I don't care if I'm not from a clan, I could light you on fire and throw you 500 feet with just my voice. They're clan markings, you fucking clown. At the offended look on her teammate's face, the blonde girl choked back a laugh, and what might have been the shade of a smile ghosted across the redhead's lips. The blonde managed to focus on the Konoha hitty-eyed sewn onto Naruto's left shoulder and asked, Are you one of the ninja from Konoha's teammate? Naruto shook his head negatively. No, but I'm with them. I know where they are if you'd like me to lead you there. Glancing behind the Suna team, he noticed the sun beginning to set on the horizon. It seems his conversation took longer than he thought. In fact, we're staying at the only hotel in town and the sun's almost set, so we'd be going the same direction anyway. Not having an argument for that, the Suna team followed Naruto as he made his way through the town. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, Genin of Konoha. The blonde gave him an easy grin hooked a thumb at herself. I'm Sabaku no Tamari, clown boy over there is Konkuro, my younger brother, and the last is Garin, our youngest sibling. We're all Genin. Konkuro was alternating glares at his sister for calling him clown boy, and Naruto for giving her the name. Garin nodded slightly and looked away with blank eyes. Silence permeated the group as they walked through town to the hotel. At the hotel, they met Team 8, who had sat down to eat dinner. Ah, you must be the Suna team. Kurenai greeted. I'm Kurenai Yuhi, Jonin-sensei of Team 8. With me are Shino Aburame, Hinata Hyuga and Kiba Inizuka. Where is your Jonin-sensei? Garin scoffed and crossed her arms over her chest. Bakyu was needed back at Suna, so he will not be joining us in any capacity. Kurenai courted a questioning eyebrow at her words, but didn't make any fuss about it. Alright, I guess. You might want to handle your sleeping arrangements before settling in. There is very little room here. The Suna trio left to do just that as Naruto sat with Team 8 to eat. 10 minutes later, the Suna team joined them again, but this time with the proprietor of the hotel, Sajin Hana. There's a problem with the rooms. She stuttered nervously, poking her forefingers together. Hinata was suddenly struck by deja vu, but couldn't find the reason for it. There are too many people. And as I have said, I do not require sleep. Garin interrupted, annoyance coloring her voice. Hana blushed in embarrassment. There still aren't enough rooms. Kurenai pointed at herself, Shino and Hinata. We can all sleep in the same room, we have done so before. Would that work? The proprietor colored and fingered the hem of her dress nervously. That would still leave one person on the ground. Naruto raised his hand and drew attention to himself. I have my bedroll, I can sleep on the floor. That should handle it. He broke no arguments, and that was that. 4 hours later. Naruto couldn't sleep. The changes made his skin itch and his bones ache along his spine, and it was keeping him from sleep. So, he sat on the roof of the motel and stared at the moon hanging above him like a crystal ball, occasionally grunting in pain as the scales grew spikes. A soft shuffle from behind him let him know that someone was coming up to the roof. Twisting around, he spotted Kurenai approaching him wearing a black nightgown and a confused look. Naruto. What are you doing up here? He shrugged tiredly and patted the spot next to him. Couldn't sleep. Do you want to join me? The Jonin gave him a searching look before sighing quietly and sitting next to him with her legs dangling off the edge of the roof. They sat in companionable silence for about an hour, before Naruto finally asked, Kurenai, can I ask you something? She turned to him with a raised eyebrow, but nodded her consent. Naruto sighed and dredged up his courage. Have noticed anything strange about the women in Konoha lately? Kurenai gave a confused look. What do you mean? There was no easy way to say this, but Naruto tried. Well, it just seems like Kunoichi have been really attracted to me lately. The raven-haired Kunoichi scoffed slightly. I didn't think you had such a big ego, Naruto. Naruto waved his hands nervously. No, not that. It's just Suzume. Chunin teaches Kunoichi practices at the academy. At a nod, he continued. Well, she propositioned me this morning. Kurenai's eyes widened in shock. Wait, Suzume propositioned you? The virgin prude Suzume. He nodded gravely. I think there might be something going on within Konoha. There's no way all of these women should be attracted to me. Kurenai tapped her chin with a thoughtful look. That's your opinion, but you are right, something is definitely going on. The two ninjas sat on the roof, pondering. Until Kurenai's right hand landed on Naruto's thigh and squeezed gently. Naruto's eyes widened almost comically. His gaze shot from her hand on his thigh to her face. She seemed to be entirely unaware that she was feeling up the blonde genin, even as her hand drifted upward and grabbed something. Sensei. Kurenai's eyes shot open in revelation before she turned to face him with a triumphant smile. I think I know. She was still unaware that she was holding Naruto's dick. Sensei. Her smile turned feral and leaned in to meet Naruto's eyes. It's me. At that point, Naruto realized that he couldn't feel any breeze, nor the heat of the sand. Looking around him, he noticed that the environment had taken on a sepia tone and had frozen. He also noticed that Kurenai had changed. Her eyes had become entirely pink and glowing, though her body didn't change at all. Well, what do we have here? She smirked as she gave him a squeeze. Young dragon with the goddess holding onto his cock. I wonder what will happen. Naruto nearly tried to scramble away, before he realized she was right. Who are you? He asked, acutely aware of how soft her hand was. Why, you don't recognize me. I'm hurt, Naruto-kun. She pouted playfully. You don't remember your first wet dream? Your first crush? How sad. The blonde's mouth dropped open, but he still didn't know who she was. That doesn't answer my question. Kurenai scoffed in frustration. Do I have to strip naked and paint myself gold? I am Debella, my love. She leaned over him until his back was against the ground, and her body was pressed on top of his. I am the goddess of beauty, my love, and the most beautiful thing is love, the rough, sweaty love and the slow, sensuous love. Debella licked up the side of his face and smirked as he shuddered. I get what I want, whatever I want, and what I want is you. She straddled his waist and ground herself against him with a low moan. My other concubines are so dull, so boring. Nord, Kadjit, are gory and so tedious. They can't satisfy me anymore. Dabella smirked as she lifted Naruto's torso up to meet hers. All my lovers have been ones that I've found throughout time, and all of them becoming boring after a time, so I decided to make the perfect lover. Naruto's eyes widened and he opened his mouth to speak, but was interrupted when the goddess introduced one of her nipples into his mouth, and his dick to her vagina. When did I get naked? Dabella moaned at the warmth in her core, and ground her hips slowly. Your mother was pregnant with you at the time, and even if I can't see your future like Akatosh, I could still feel the potential that swirled about you like maelstrom. I poured a bit of my essence into your mother, and let it mix in with yours, and then I tweaked what I wanted. Nothing serious, my love, she said at his white eyes, just a thing or two here or there. A higher libido, an appreciation for women. Though I didn't have to change your stamina or your size, love. Uzumaki genes are the best that I've ever seen. Dabella threw her head back and moaned as Naruto plunged inside of her deeply. Ah, yes, there. But then Arke sealed Alduin's soul into you, and added all the bestial instincts that come with being a dragon. I'll have to thank him one day. She pushed his head away from her breast and kissed him deeply, her tongue plundering his mouth like a sexy bandit. So you see, with the dragon in you and my essence, you have become the perfect mate for me. With the dragon, you will never die. With my essence, you will love as many as you can. Dabella stared into his eyes with a wide grin. You will be mine forever, when you tire of these mortals, my love. They are nothing compared to me. I can be whoever. Her body shifted to that of a woman with light blue hair that was cut short with pale skin and red eyes. Whatever, she changed into a water elemental, her curves replaced by ever-flowing blue liquid. Make no mistake, my love. You will tire of mortals and their mortality. And when you do, she leaned forward and bit his shoulder roughly, releasing at the same time he did, splashing her arousal over his thighs and crotch. A mark in the shape of a strange rune was drawn out from her bite, circling his skin with small, invisible chains. You will find me, and I will ravish you. Until next time, my love. With that, Dabella left. Time began to turn again, with breeze blowing and the moon regaining its color. Though, Naruto and Kurenai were both naked and covered in sweat. The red-eyed Jonin moaned lightly and nipped at Naruto's chest. That was wonderful, Naruto-kun, she murmured. I've never felt so alive and loved. Kurenai pushed herself up on shaky arms and licked her lips lustfully. We're doing that again and again. As Kurenai began to move, deep in Naruto's mind, Alduin covered his head with his wings, and tried to block out the sounds of his pseudo-son having sex. Why must I by curse to hear him get some, but not get any myself? I have needs too. In her cage, the Kyuubi was growling and scratching at her floor. Aedra bitch. Marking my mate. Fucking my mate. I will destroy you for this, Dabella, slut goddess. His is mine. Ember had nothing to say, though her moans of master, there, did not need to be explained. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification, and also check out the other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.